Ashton Morrow Kang. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Tell me where we're talking to you right now.
Yeah, so I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia. So working from home today and most days right now, as I think a lot of people are in the midst of COVID-19 and the global pandemic.
Right. And you work with Delta Airlines, right?
I do, yeah. I have been with Delta for almost 5 years here in Atlanta. Started supporting their corporate communications team, so doing a lot of media relations, and then recently transitioned over into the airport customer service team. So still doing communications, but really more focused on those individuals who actually work in the airport every day. So not really your flight attendants, your pilots, but your ticketing and gate agents, your ramp agents, those kind of individuals. So I support 81 domestic stations across the US right now. Yeah, and Seattle, our hub in Seattle.
No kidding. So the public relations part is kind of divided up into different areas of focus then.
Yeah, so the way that CorpCom was structured when I was a part of that team, we were kind of beat it out like a newspaper, right? So my beats over the 4 years that I was in CorpCom sort of changed all the time, but the one beat that I kept pretty consistently was airport customer service. So I supported our flight attendants at one point, corporate safety, security, and compliance, sustainability, had just the opportunity to touch a lot of different pieces of our business, including global sales, which is our travel managers and agencies that are bringing kind of corporate travel to Delta. So had a chance to kind of touch both the commercial side as well as the operations. I think the fact that ACS kind of stuck with me when an opportunity opened up to move from the public relations position into a within the department, really internal communications focused role. I don't know, it was a really unique opportunity. And I think sometimes it's good to follow a great leader. And so I was really excited about who I would be working for in her leadership. She's one of the senior most female leaders at Delta. So was really excited to be, reporting directly to her and learning from her wealth of experience. And yeah, that was 6 months ago. Didn't realize at the time where we would be 6 months later. But really excited that I made this decision. I see what my colleagues are doing from a communications perspective in media. I think it's been truly like a career defining challenge for them. I think they're doing great work, but it's allowed me to kind of diversify the work that I would be doing and really be a little more tangible in like the communications that I'm delivering, and then being able to see that real-time effect of the work that we do.
Well, and I would think that that's not something you'd want to, well, I wish you could, but I'm thinking that probably you might feel more effective doing that now that you've been in the corporation for a while, and you know how everything works, you know the people, you know what some of the issues are now, right? I mean,
absolutely.
Jumping in, you wouldn't.
Yeah,
necessarily.
No, I think engagement, which is a part of my role, is all about understanding your people and the challenges that they face every day. And so I have to understand, although I've never been a frontline agent, I need to understand how they get paid, what the experience is to park a jet bridge against a plane, and the factors that could cause them to get an injury so that we can help them mitigate what those problems might be. And so there's a lot of job shadowing. I was traveling constantly in this new role. Before this, we do something called Day of Service. So we actually visit the local station and we work side by side with the employees. We hear their feedback, and then we're able to kind of share best practices with the leaders there to help improve station performance or employee morale. So lots of different opportunities there. But I think that's one thing my team has been really good at, is taking that feedback and really acting upon it.
Admit it, did you get to drive the jet bridge?
I have not driven it by myself actually before, but I have been standing there and watching someone else do it or coached through it. I did get to go up in one of the de-icing buckets, pretty ridiculously high up, probably like 5 stories high, and was by myself because only one person fits in those. So I've gotten to do some really cool stuff with Delta, and just like stuff I never would have thought about.
I went to get an ice bucket one time at a hotel, but it doesn't sound nearly that exciting. That's pretty fun.
My husband does that for me. He's the one that wants the ice at every hotel we're at.
It's important. So now you were a mass comm major at Emory and Henry, right? And mass comm, were you a double major? Mass comm and Asian studies?
Yeah, so I was in the international studies group. I did Asian studies.
Well, that's kind of cool. What made you want to do that? Did you think it'd make you more marketable?
I think so. I was really interested in kind of where public diplomacy and public relations met. And Syracuse has this really cool program, and I think that's where my mind was at Emory and Henry. It was like, I want to get into the public diplomacy program at Syracuse. I ended up, after Emory and Henry, I did the Asian, what is it called? Marshall Abroad Asia Teach in China program. And so I was there for 2 years. And I think that helped me a lot with my resume and just really further developing my global perspective.
Did you teach ESL?
So I was in a elementary school. So I taught half the classes, and then my co-teacher, who was Chinese, taught the other half. So math, it's a little bit easier to learn math in Chinese because the numbers, instead of like 12, which would be 2 syllables, they're always going to have the single syllable numbers. They don't have made up words like 12 would be like 10 plus 2, right? So it's a little cleaner and it's faster, and you can remember only a certain number of syllables. And when you try to do it in English, it's going to always limit how many you can do. So they're very particular about their math being in Chinese. They taught Chinese and they taught history. And then they would teach, obviously, math. And then we taught English and social studies and science.
Well, what a neat experience. You were there for 2 years.
I was, yeah, it was a great time.
Well, and so when you came back, did you come back because you had this job with Delta, or did you do something else in between?
Yeah, so I went to Alabama for grad school. So I had applied to Syracuse. I got into that program, that dream program of mine.
Yeah.
But I think what I've learned is, sometimes everything that you're planning for, it might not be the thing that you were meant to do. And I got offered a full paid, actually paid graduate assistantship. So they were going to cover my tuition and pay me a monthly stipend to go to Alabama and do their advertising and public relations master's program. And at that point, it was kind of a no-brainer. You still get your master's, and they're going to pay you to come do it. So I went to the University of Alabama for about 1.5 years and completed that program, and applied to Edelman Public Relations, which is a big international PR firm. I think that's another one where I really thought that was my dream again. I was like so convinced, and I get really determined sometimes. I was like, it has to be Edelman. And I was there for about a year. And I think the value of learning at agency, just the pace and the volume of clients and the competitive nature, like there's so much good there, but I think you're also separated from the result. You don't get to feel what you're creating, because it goes back to the company, who then implements it, who then it comes back to you, maybe kind of how it worked out. But I didn't feel as connected to what I was doing. And so probably 6 or so months into Edelman, I started applying other places, and Delta was one of them, and did an interview. And I think having both China and now Edelman on my resume, not to mention, I think the really great thing about Emory and Henry Mass Communication is just the diversity of the program. It's very practical. I think what Dr. Keller built, and you have to learn how to do video and create a news clip, even if you're not going to touch broadcast, and you have to take writing, and you have to do multiple platforms, and all of the design classes with Dr. Lauder. So I think it gave me a lot of skills on top of, Mass Comm 101 and, actual knowledge-based stuff. You actually learn how to create. And I think that kind of gave me an edge in applying for Delta and other places.
Well, and you probably graduated with a few things that you could show somebody, right? I mean, that's part of what you do.
They are really big on portfolios. And so I had created a portfolio after my mass communications, I guess junior year, maybe senior year, you're working on your portfolio. And so I had that, and then actually was able to take that. And I think now they're already doing this for all students, but I kind of merged mine into an online portfolio. And so I had a website that I was able to use on all of my resumes and applications. And it's interesting how, for me at the time, the resume really showcased my work. And I would clip I worked for WEHC, and I did different things and had all these random clips that I could put in there. And then now, in the midst of the pandemic, I looked to LinkedIn, and yesterday with a lot of people afraid about, will I have a job tomorrow, that kind of thing. I got a message from a recruiter based on my LinkedIn profile. And I just think that your online presence, whether you're looking for a job or not, it's so important, because sometimes it's just the peace of mind that, like, this is terrible right now for a lot of people. But if you're presenting yourself correctly and you're building a resume that people will want to talk to you about, I think a lot of the times, yeah, you're going to have to put in work too, but sometimes maybe the right opportunity will come to you as well.
Gosh, you answered my question without me having to ask it, which is, what would you say to kids right now or students right now who are, looking to graduate in the middle of such a crazy time? But you're saying make sure that you look good and make sure that your public persona, your public impression is looking good right now, right?
Absolutely. And to go beyond that, I mean, LinkedIn, obviously, and then your portfolio are going to be easy places to point people to see your skill set, especially when you're looking for a first career.
Mm-hmm.
You don't necessarily have a ton of strong resume builders just yet. And so anything that you can show, even if it's classwork driven, is going to be really helpful. And so having that laid out is really important. And then beyond that, I mean, every time we're bringing on someone new, we are looking at Instagram and Facebook. And I know everyone talks about it, but just be really smart. Make your pages private, or think about the content that's on there. I mean, they're looking at it. And then beyond that, I think it's networking too. So I think LinkedIn is great for that.
Mm-hmm.
When I was at Alabama, one of the fellow individuals in my graduate assistantship, she wrote a letter to a recruiter, just with a lot of passion about how she wanted to work for this one agency. And, she just wanted to learn from him and all of these things. And she ended up securing a job by being proactive and reaching out to a recruiter. And I think that's sometimes showing that initiative and showing it personalized. I mean, we all get a million, like, hey, do you want to be my friend, like, notifications. But when it's, hey, I noticed that you also went to Emory and Henry and you have the career that I really want. And, I just want to have 30 minutes of your time for coffee. I think everybody has 30 minutes. So don't be afraid to ask, but put some thought maybe into how you go about it and personalize it.
I think that is really good advice, because I mean, you're right. Those of you who are in great positions probably get, a lot of requests for this, that, and the other. And so having a little more personal touch, I think, is a great idea. Well, I think that's great advice for young people right now. And, and speaking of the whole pandemic crazy situation, you're in an industry right now that is, having a kind of a big hit from what's going on right now. The tourism industry has been hurt by people's inability to travel right now. So how are you doing?
Yeah, no, I'm really lucky. I feel pretty secure in my career, but I absolutely know that's not the reality for a lot of people. I think certainly the CARES Act funding has helped airlines, and I really appreciate all of our legislators and really just everyone who supported that funding in the first place, just to take care of salaries. And that was the focus, right? And there's so many jobs tied to aviation.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Across,
well, you know that from going out and doing that day of service thing where you go out and see what everybody does.
Yeah, so we do, in my current role, I do day of service and get to go into the airports. And I think you kind of get a feel for just how much it takes to run an airport. I mean, it's a mini city in a lot of cases, especially here in Atlanta, where we have the world's most traveled airport. It's crazy what they have going on. And, they have
how many employees does Delta even have? I mean,
yeah, Delta has around 90,000 employees. Yeah.
That
so
is a
we
lot of
serve like over 350 destinations. We're bringing maybe like, I'm not sure, 200 million passengers maybe a year or something. So it's a ton of people that, we have the opportunity to touch. And I think what's unique about Delta is that we're a global airline, obviously based in the US, but a lot of what we do is global. So if you look at the airline industry, there are some carriers who are just operating domestic. And then there are other carriers who kind of have a split global and domestic network. We had a really strong global network. A lot of that's been pulled back right now. Global travel is not, especially if it is a necessity, right? Right now, we're really focused on who needs to be traveling, whether that's healthcare workers who need to get somewhere, or families who are losing loved ones and want to be there for their last few days. And so
Right.
I think that's sort of where we are as a nation, but even around the world right now. And there's a lot of restrictions even on the quarantine rules when you arrive to a country. So you've got 14 days of quarantine. You have to stay in your hotel, or 12 days, depending on where you are. I think Hawaii has a 12-day quarantine even right now. If you try to go even just domestically there, you're going to have to stay in your hotel and not really leave unless it's for a medical appointment.
Wow, I hadn't thought of that.
There's a lot of regulations right now. And I think domestic travel is starting to pick back up a little bit. But I think what Delta did really well, we were able to adjust to the new demand really quickly. And I think our leadership made some really smart decisions in parking aircraft. We usually fly 800-ish aircraft, I guess, around, and they were able to pull that down and really get the right number for our fleet. We've also started to retire some of those aircraft to really think about where we're going in the future. So we merged with Northwest 2007, 2008. And so we brought two carriers together, and we both had purchased different plans for fleet. And so the aircraft types were pretty diverse at Delta. And so we were able with this to really think about what is the future of flying for us and how do we make it more sustainable. Certainly newer engines are going to be more fuel efficient, lots of aerodynamic differences, wing tips, things that can really make us a smarter airline for the world, but even that's a cost savings for us. If you think about it, fuel burn is a huge expense for airlines.
Right.
And so I think we're taking this opportunity. How often does a company get to stop everything and really dissect where we want to be in the future? And I think that's what Delta is doing right now, is looking at every element of our business and saying, do we do this because we were so big and we were moving at such a pace that this is what we needed to survive? Or do we do this because it's the right thing to be doing? And so that's where I think we have the opportunity to look at the different aircraft and make some difficult, in many cases, decisions around which fleet to retire and that sort of thing.
I love that you're saying that, because I feel like I've had a version of this conversation with people in a lot of different industries. The whole issue of there were so many things that we really wanted to stop and think about, but you couldn't take the time to quit to think. And now everybody's had to stop and really kind of reconsider some things. The thing that I'm asking everybody is, what do you think you'll do differently when this is over with? And it feels like Delta is making some thoughts about things that they might do differently when this is different.
Yeah, no, I know cleanliness, for one, is a new standard for us. I think we've seen from our customers just how much they value a clean and safe airline. And so we've put a lot into cleanliness standards. And before, certainly every plane had a regular schedule to where it was, it got a soft clean. So really just like the seat pockets emptied and kind of tray tables wiped down and a quick turn maybe clean. And then the overnight clean would be a little deeper. And then every like 2 months or 1 month or something, they'd pull it in and it would be completely clean from top to bottom. And now we're seeing that overnight clean kind of pull through to the turn, and the more frequent clean pulling up. And we've started spraying the planes with fogging to really prevent additional bacteria spread or anything like that. So really anything and everything they could do to help with cleaning. And then they introduced a new boarding process where we board from the back of the plane, starting with the people in the back.
Yeah, we have never understood why you start from the front.
Yeah, so now everyone's boarding from the back, and customers are really happy about it because people stay seated and they kind of wait their turn, and then they get up when it's their turn to board. And so I think it's cutting back on kind of clusters at the gate. There's spacing pillars now in our jet bridges to kind of spread people out. So I think there's some stuff that that will continue, and I think Delta is ahead of our game in terms of really making sure that we have the right kind of the right thought process behind how we make clean the new standard.
Yeah, and you feel like you're being heard as far as like ideas and that kind of thing. I guess everybody has a chance to share some good ideas at this point too, and so that's kind of an opportunity.
Absolutely. So we have things called business resource groups, and they're kind of groups based on either interest group areas, or they might be based on gender, ethnicity, that kind of thing. So we have SHE, which is the women's group. We have Gen Gauge, which is, I think it started as a millennial group, but it's kind of become an everybody group, anybody who wants to talk about the future of work. We have Green Up, which I was the vice president of. That's our sustainability group at Delta.
Yay.
Yeah, so loved the work we were able to do there, but Green Up and Gen Gauge have partnered to kind of put together a proposal to say, what is the future of work from home? I think a lot of the times we felt that the offices were getting crowded and that there were a lot of people there and the parking, and there were little things that annoyed you. And I think now that people are working from home, or at least the non-critical roles are able to, you can breathe a little better, and you actually might work a little longer, which
you're
I don't know
not,
if that's a good thing or not.
no, it's exact. Even here, I mean, my commute is across the street, but even at that, we have had the conversation that I feel like what I'm doing is my work, and we're not talking or whatever. We're just doing it, and it really is it's a different way, and I kind of like a lot of it. Not all of it, but I like a lot of it.
Yeah, no, I totally think that's where we are, and I think that's the kind of change that Delta's really open to. I mean, from the beginning, our CEO has held forums with us weekly, and they're live on Workplace, which is basically Facebook, but for companies. So it's like an internal Facebook. And so he hosts a chat once a week, and you can ask questions live. They're responding to them real time.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah, leaders are looking at it and responding. And so it's everything from, what do you think about the suggestion, to, I'm worried about my job. What do you think about, furloughs in the future and that kind of thing. So I think they're so candid and transparent, and that's sort of unique in my mind to the company culture that we built here. The Delta culture is all about that open door policy and based on feedback. And I think we have something really special, and it's something worth preserving. And I think our leaders go out of their way to keep those lines of communications open, and to really not only take feedback, but act on feedback, and then check in again to see if it worked, and then act again if they need to. So it's a really iterative process, and I've been really impressed with just the level of transparency and communication.
Well, it sounds like you've got some cool people in leadership right now, if they're willing to do some of that, because that's kind of a big shift for most big corporations to give you that many opportunities to hear what's going on and to ask questions about what's going on. I mean, that's not typical for big corporations. So that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, so our founder, CE Woman, had these rules of the road that a few years ago, our previous CEO found in his desk drawer. So he brought his desk up, the old desk of CE Woman, and put it in his office. When he was going through it, he stumbled upon what we now use as our rules of the road. And they're pretty simple tenets, keep your deals, trustworthiness, that kind of thing. But one of them is servant leadership. And I think that one really hit home with a lot of people. And that's sort of where Delta leaders find themselves today, is leadership through service. You have to be willing to support your teams and do the work yourself and be a part of the solution. And I think that's expected at all levels of leadership, that you demonstrate what we call the rules of the road. And so I think culture has so much to do with where companies are today, and what they're willing to change and what they're not willing to change.
Yeah. Well, what's your best advice for those of us who are getting the little wanderlust back? I mean, are you thinking it's going to be pretty soon we can start traveling around a little bit again, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think for right now, I think Delta has made it really safe to travel. Our airports, like I said, they're cleaner than they've ever been. There is so much attention to it, and we've blocked our seats down to 60%. So there's not a middle seat to be had. You're going to have space between you and whoever you're traveling with. In first class, we've blocked it down to 50%. So there's just a lot going on right now to take care of our customers. Masks are required on Delta. Just a lot of little details that are really thoughtful. But I think the feedback we've gotten from people who do have to travel, I mean, it's been excellent. And I think they're really happy with where Delta is. Our scores have actually improved in terms of customer sentiment and their experience overall, because they see the detail and the focus put on travel. So I think we're ready for you. I think right now, the question I think on every traveler's mind is, well, what would I go do? And so that's the piece. It's, when did the Disney Worlds open up again? And when do the attractions that we want to go out and see, open up again. And I think that's where we are is we're ready, but I think, we got to wait for the world to be ready and for it to be safe and people to feel comfortable. And
Mm-hmm.
certainly, I think we also have the financial piece to overcome. I think a lot of people
Right.
are in difficult situations, but
Right. Well,
hopefully.
and I appreciate what you're saying about a reduced capacity to make it a more safe and pleasurable experience for people. I think that may be what happens even in a lot of those places like Disney and Yellowstone and those kind of places, is that we need to think about our metrics a little bit. That do you really want to cram as many people as you physically can, or do you want to give people a little space and make it better for the attraction and for the people who are visiting?
Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of companies are doing. I know Delta has some infographics on news.delta.com that walk you through kind of the new experience. And I think that's the big thing. Consumers have to see what the world would be like. They knew travel yesterday. And if they assume it's the same as yesterday and it's as crowded as it was, that's a fear for a lot of people. And so how do you start to show them what travel is today? So I think our team has done a great job of keeping people updated on what travel looks like right now. And then beyond that, if you look at like Disney and what they did with the Shanghai Disneyland opening, they walked consumers through the experience and they said, here's what you knew and here's where we are. And I think a lot of companies are going to do that. But yeah, that's what I would say is like, take a second and investigate who you trust at this point and where you want to spend your money and your time, because wanderlust is real. I have it. I think I was traveling maybe every week before this. So it's been strange to kind of feel a little set. It's been good because you can kind of like calibrate and rethink about like where your priorities are and stuff. So I've enjoyed that from a personal perspective, but I'm ready again.
Do you think you'll appreciate it more, or when you finally do get to travel again?
I hope so. Yeah, I think at least at first, I know I will. I know so often, that initial few times you appreciate something and then you lose it. But I do think that people are going to look back, and the same thing with 9/11, right? You looked at 9/11 and you said, this was the airport before 9/11 and this is the airport after. And I think for travel, we're going to feel that. This was the travel experience before COVID-19 and this is the travel experience after. And I think it's going to shape not only travel, but other industries as well. But I think, it's just going to be different. But yeah, absolutely going to be grateful for the opportunities and the chance to get out and see the world again.
Well, let me tell you, Delta rescued me when I got ditched by an unnamed and now out of business airline. So I have always had a soft place in my heart for Delta. So I'm glad to hear such great things about the corporate culture and about what you guys are doing to plan for the future. So this is very exciting.
Yeah, no, and we have a lot of EHC alums at Delta. So Zach's flight attendant.
Zach's flying planes now, isn't he?
He was going to try to be a pilot. I don't know, where he is with the COVID stuff, but he was a flight attendant for a few years and had done so well there, became like a trainer. He was climbing the ladder too, and then opted to fly, and really impressed with him. And then Libby Hurley is a flight attendant.
Oh, that's right.
As well.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So we've got a few people around.
We need to have a virtual reunion of all the Delta alumni. So that we'll get together. Ashton, this has been terrific, and we appreciate you being so willing to talk to our students about what's going on and so willing to talk to our alumni about what's going on with Delta. So thank you very, very much. We appreciate it. And I know our students are going to be inspired and excited to see all that you're up to.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, thanks a bunch.
Hold on. All right. Bye.